Hello, hi. Tonight we have a great invitee. We have Archie Daniel Hanna, writer and director from Succubus. Daniel has a big background overall in writing, and you have also camera work. He did do a little bit of all of the work that is possible to do in the movies. And right now, he released this movie called Succubus. Right now is showing on Macabro Film Festival in Mexico City and in other festivals. You can tell me more about it, Daniel. And if you're in the United States and in Canada, you can watch it for free on Tubi. So, welcome, Daniel.
Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure. I have the pleasure of like watching your movie. I watched it on Tubi. My colleague that is in Mexico, Octavio, got the chance to go and watch it on the big screen, and he so far he told me that it is one of the movies that he has enjoyed the most overall because it is well planned. There is the acting is good, and it also has like some sense of humor that is
Hmm.
kind of dark humor at some point. And well, the premise of the movie is a guy who just get separated, kind of pre-divorce. He just get into a dating app and he matched with something that is not entirely human. In this case, a succubus. How do you came with this idea, and what are your influences for creating this film?
Yeah, the idea initially came from a lot of people ask if I had a very, a similar experience on a dating app, and I would say not one as quite as intense as this one,
Mhm.
but years ago when I first was on dating apps for the first time when they were pretty new, I did encounter several like bots and things like that, or maybe
Mhm.
like phishing scams, people trying to get you to put information in, and maybe so they can steal your identity or get your passwords, things like that. And I remember it was just such a weird experience. This feeling of like there's this kind of weird internet world out there, and you don't really know who you're talking to and who's there, and people don't always have the motives that they seem to have or
Mhm.
pretend like they have, right? And that was just where the initial idea came from, was some kind of dating app horror story where somebody encounters something that is supernatural or beyond human, and where that could take us.
It is really interesting, and actually, the first time when the first if I have to refer to another Succubus movie, it's more like a short. If you remember the first VHS anthology,
Mhm.
it includes a short Lily, which I love. It's really good, but I feel that what your films particular gives is kind of like really sensual, and
Mhm.
it is really kind of like you have the right casting of Rachel Cook. And Rachel Cook, she is an influencer and she's a model, and she has a big presence. At some point, it is a person who will steal like your side if you see it on the street. So, how is like the question is going regarding the cast? How was the casting process? I believe Brendan Bradley do an amazing job. Also, you have Ron Perlman, who is kind of like a movie royalty, in horror movie royalty because he have worked with Guillermo del Toro several
Mhm.
times. How do you put this cast together?
Yeah, so the way Brendan came in is Brendan and I worked together about maybe 13 years ago, something, when I was still in graduate school, and we became, friends and wanted to always collaborate again. And what happened was, because the character on the page, when we were initially, going out, you think people always say, well, you have to get some kind of star in the lead, right? Or someone who has influence in the lead. But people were kind of a little scared by the script, or afraid that they would come off looking badly, And
Mhm.
sometimes people would say the character of Chris isn't sympathetic, and I thought he should be sympathetic. Like, he makes he makes choices that maybe are questionable, but I think he's understandable, and empathetic. And I thought, Brendan, if I cast Brendan, people will empathize with him. Like, people will go on the journey with him, because Brendan is such a, his kind of good earnestness comes through, I think, in his
Mhm.
performance. And that was how Brendan came. And we did some little tests, just Brendan doing the opening scenes with the camera and conversations with his wife and things, just me and one of the producers reading with him. And then we showed it to everyone else and they said, okay, yes, like we get it. We get that Brendan is kind of perfect for this. So that was really nice because then you have like a partner in crime, someone you've worked with before and know a long time. Ron came on relatively early. You know, we went to him for this part, and we kind of heard that it might be something, the kind of thing he might be interested in, given, like you said, Guillermo del Toro and these kind of roles that he's done in the past. It felt like a good fit, and the way Ron, you know, approaches things, he just reads the script, and he said if he wants to keep turning the page, then you know, and likes it, then maybe he'll do it. And I guess that's how he felt, but it was a couple of years. It was honestly about 18 months between when Ron read it because we lost some financing. And this was a little after COVID, but there was sort of a COVID outbreak again. And so it was about 18 months in between. Then we had to go back. And Ron told me when he was in Montana that he was like, what is this? I don't remember what this movie is. So he had to read it again to see if he's still going to do it. And we're glad he did because he kind of brings so much, like you said, so much gravitas to a role like this. And we had fun. We had fun with it. And Rachel was strangely, because she's about as perfect as you could get. She was a last minute. She came in last minute. We had lost another actress, and Rachel was suggested by one of our producers, and we did a Zoom, and she obviously was really great. But when she came out, she just like Rachel has such an ability to work like with the camera because the actors are, you know, they're using their phone and some of it's shot on the phone, and the actors are really holding the phone and operating it, and Rachel just really has that distinct ability to really connect through the phone, you know, through a screen and a camera. And I think that's why she has the success that she has in the modeling world. And it really translated to this movie in a dark, interesting, fun way.
Yeah, and actually, I really can relate a lot because I believe I had the opportunity to watch another movie made by an Australian director, and also work with models, and it is like a different approach, right? Because they have their own energy, rather like a kind of like a regular human beings. It is, I believe, it's a whole world to adapt and adapt the whole production regarding them. So, and also you have Olivia Grace, Applegate, and Rosanna Arquette. Rosanna Arquette has been working for a long time, and Olivia Grace is also like really present in the industry right now. So I believe you have like a really, really like solid cast.
Yeah, no, really great cast, wonderful cast, and honestly, every single person, because it's a small cast, and every single person really was sort of the exact perfect kind of person for the role. And you just feel so lucky when that happens because a lot of the times those things happen at the last minute, or you have someone who's good and they leave and then someone else comes in. And I really feel like the kind of musical chairs of casting of who's available when, depending on your shooting, when it all lines up like that, you just have to be thankful because I wouldn't change a single person in the cast. Yeah.
So right now you can watch the movie on Tubi if you're in the United States or if you are like abroad. But on the other hand, like how many festivals is still like running around outside the United States? Right now it's in Macabro. What other festival you have programmed?
I think we're kind of coming towards the end because
Okay.
I did, you know, I was in Manchester around this time or maybe October last year. So we've been doing festivals overseas for about a year now. And we were in Portugal, we were in Brazil. Um, we've had two in the UK actually. So yeah, we've been kind of making the rounds, and it's been fun. I've only been able to go to, I think, one of them myself, but it was really fun to get to do that and see it on the big screen with an audience, especially an audience who, you know, doesn't owe me anything. We did play in LA for a week, but to see it with an audience who doesn't know me at all and still hear people laugh at the dark humor and stuff it's a good feeling. Yeah.
So about talking about the succubus and this creature,
Mhm.
because it is kind of like it's a biblical creature.
Mhm.
That's some sort of way in the Bible appears once, but if you ask like in the Jewish folklore, they talk about Lilith and
Mhm.
all of that. So how do you mix that catfishing and like the truth, like of masculine vulnerability, because that's what how you portray the thing. It's like a man who in there needs to be feel that belongs. He gets really vulnerable. How did you do you merge all these ideas?
Sure. I mean, that's a great question. It came about in the sense of you'd think like a succubus wants to the goal of the succubus is to kind of entrap the man, right, and to seduce the man and to be able to kind of capture his mind and his soul or everything like that, right? And so the way I thought about it is in ancient times, what would a succubus would maybe come to you in your dreams, or it's kind of what it's known for is like dreams or things like that, or maybe it'd be some other form. But what would it do today? What would be the way that it could most easily reach the person it wants or get through? It'd be through something like a dating app or some kind of imagery. It's kind of like a dream. The idea was like it kind of puts you in a dream state of using your phone or not really living in the real world, living in this phone world, which is sort of part of the metaphor of the movie too. Is there's a whole kind of fake world, that we all live in, which is where we're all projecting our best selves, and how would a creature like this use that? And in terms of like the masculine vulnerability in that aspect, it was an element of thinking we're also in a time where a lot of people are lonelier, because even though we're all connected on our phones, we're kind of lonelier in the real world and more separated and more kind of behind these walls and these facades of our internet persona, or like let's look at how trying to only show the best aspects of our life through Instagram and things like that. So it's kind of taking that loneliness and that sense of isolation and using that as a point where it could more easily manipulate or trap him by playing that up and giving him the opportunity to sort of break those walls down that had been put up for a long time.
There were any kind of challenge during the production?
A lot of challenges, yeah. I mean, one, as you know, like the first 20 something minutes of the movie, they're all done in screen. They're done through phone and done through FaceTime, kind of like we're talking now. One thing was had to shoot all that stuff separately, and then edit it together to feel like it's live, which is very challenging. But any indie, you're on a very tight schedule. I think we shot something like 14 days for our primary production, so very fast. And yeah, just we had to plan everything. We built the set, the red room, that's Adra's room, building that and, working with that and making that feel bigger and making it feel like the real kind of unusual supernatural place that it is was challenging. And it was just kind of a different thing every day. Every day had its own unique challenge, whether it's practical effects or working with green screen or like working with Ron was great, but we had to schedule it very specifically and very well to make sure that we could get everything that we wanted with him while we had him. So it was always a challenge, but kind of great to see it come together. Yeah.
Also, there is a big erotic element into the movie, kind of like that's part of the succubi. It's an erotic entity. How did you manage like all the intimacy between the actors, and how there was an intimate coordinator? How do you plan to the intimate scenes? How do you coordinate all of that?
Yeah, it was definitely challenging. And in this week, we didn't have an intimacy coordinator. We were in Montana, and if we were going to do it, we would have had to probably do it via Zoom or something anyway, which seemed like that wouldn't really work. And so it was a situation where I had never done, honestly, even like a kissing scene in a movie before this. So for me, I was definitely the like least experience in terms of trying to how do we do this. But I was lucky that Brendan and Olivia, and especially Brendan, really talked me through, here's how we should do it. Like, here's how we should not like do each thing, but here's how we should approach it. And it very much was a process of just talking through what the intent of the scene is. Here's, everyone knows the script, what's the intent, what are we trying to get at, and then sort of thinking, and then the actors would sort of walk through and kind of talk through what seemed natural or what seemed would be normal, and then everyone could discuss that I don't really think is right. Let's not do that, or yeah, that's okay, that makes sense. And it was very much just a discussion of each moment and each beat. And one of the weird, ironic things is in the scenes with Brendan and Rachel, except at the end, in the sort of big seduction scene in the middle of the movie where she's trying to pull him in, if you notice, you never actually even see them together because
Yeah.
it kind of mirrors the way it is in the camera, as
Mhm.
if it was on Zoom or something the whole time. And so that was its own, because they were there, and sometimes you see their hands and stuff, but they had a giant camera, like a whole camera between them. And
Mhm.
so, we're holding the camera, we're kind of guiding the camera, and they would have to kind of reach around and like hug so when you're doing stuff like that, no
Mhm.
one's really even thinking about intimacy. It's very technical and kind of
Mhm.
funny and strange. And then just in the end when it's edited, it's like, oh wow, that actually is very intense.
Yeah, and that's another thing. It's a great editing because there is actually they don't touch and they are not
Hmm.
together. And
Hmm.
actually, the ones who are like close at some point is Brendan and Olivia. They are
Hmm.
close, but it is for a minute, and it is well performed. And I think it's overall there is a big load on Brendan because Brendan has to carry on with the movie, which is
Hmm.
also like Rachel Cook is present like in and out, but Brendan has this kind of like big job on holding the presence there, and I think he did a great job because you can feel fear, you can feel a little
Hmm.
bit, you can like love of him, you can feel support for him, and I really really like it. I really enjoy it.
Good. I'm really glad that you said that because he really did have to carry the movie through, and he had such a big responsibility. And in something like this, where you're going so fast, too. We would be like when he is kind of jumping back and forth between talking with her and talking with Ron and all these things. We'd have to change angles, and say, okay, now let's go back to this part of the scene and do that. And he just had to jump through it all so fast and try and change keep up with the perspective of the character. And in terms of shooting, it's such a small movie, not even a script supervisor. So Brendan really he'd be present in every scene and acting with every actor, even if he wasn't the one on camera. For instance, if we were doing a FaceTime and I was Brendan and you were
Mhm.
another character, he's always there, always reading with them. And he would really remember how he did it to try and sort of guide the scene so that it would always match up. And so that was so key to making it all click, I think, and feel organic.
Yeah, by the way, talking about production design, it is a small space, but I noticed there is a good trick that you do when he entered into the room. You play with the camera and you like switch, and then he is on the bed.
Hmm.
That's a great trick, and actually, kind of like it's pure movie magic. Kind of like there is something you kind of squeeze something in between the thing, and soon the guy teleport us all the audience with him because basically that's the other thing. The language, you put us as the camera, and you play with
Hmm.
several cameras. How do you pick up what cameras you wanted to use and when?
Yeah. A lot of it had to do with thinking of connection, like we've talked about when they're connecting through a screen. Like if in the parts where Brendan has to interact with the screen, but maybe he's like starting to have doubts or suspicions, we would shoot him in the real world, because he's sort of more just with himself. But
Mhm.
is the idea of getting constantly drawn into the camera, right? Getting drawn into the computer, getting drawn into that world that's kind of Adra's world. And so that would be a thing of starting in the camera and then him pulling away from it because he's trying to live his life, he's trying to live his life, and then slowly getting brought back into the actual computer camera versus the objective omniscient camera that is traditional in movies. And then once he transitions and crosses over into her world, at that point you're just in a fantasy world, so we're using a cinematic camera. But that was how we thought of it, was that creeping towards being back on her kind of level playing field, which is through the screen initially.
Yeah. On the other hand, you put a cell phone on the poster. Is the
Mhm.
cell phone a kind of succubi on your perspective?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. That's that device that's kind of sucking us all in right now, right? And got a big hold on us. So yeah, for sure.
There is another interesting topic. You have besides Ron Perlman and Brendan, you have
Mhm.
another character, his friend. So his friend, it is really interesting because the character of Brendan is really vulnerable. It is
Mm.
a sensitive guy, but his friends he seems to be a really bit out there, right? So you also portray like a relationship of. Uh, a guy who can be like empathic and really sensitive and feel, he mentioned always that he felt a little bit guilty of everything and he feels ashamed towards a guy in contrast he doesn't care about anything. How do you manage that kind of complicity, and how do you separate these two characters of Eddie and and Chris?
Yeah. Yeah, for Ed, it's Eddie. You know, he's a little bit the devil on his shoulder, right? Trying to kind of get him to go the direction that Eddie thinks he should go, and someone who kind of wanted someone who represented just a bit more of a, I guess, like traditionally, maybe not traditionally masculine, but sort of hyper masculine. You know,
Mhm,
kind of arrogant but funny and confident guy to sort of be the like alpha.
mhm,
Um, and with him too, though, we wanted to show a little bit in his characters, and that there was maybe some like vulnerability or sadness underneath that is like repressed,
yeah.
um, and that maybe it's a little bit, maybe he's a little bit putting on a show so people don't kind of see how that he does kind of have his own regrets or his own kind of things in his life that he wants to change. But yeah, it was also just fun, really fun to write a character like that and have a character like that. And Derek is was so perfect at that part because he doesn't ever try to be funny. It just is the character and lets the character be funny, you know. So it always never feels like he's, from my perspective, ever doing too much. He just is the character embodying him, and so it was a lot of fun with those scenes.
So Daniel, you have a long experience working as editor, and sometimes
Mhm.
you sometimes you have a job that sometimes antagonize the director.
Mhm.
And a good director looks for a good editor, and the good director likes that the editor antagonize him. How like does your editorial experience help you as a director?
I think it's so important, and I think if people want to direct, they should definitely try editing. You know, even if it's just editing their own stuff at first. I definitely value working with other editors because it gives me a lot of perspective, and you know, editors have different ideas and different, and you know, will have ideas you'll never have. But for me, what it does is when I'm filming something, sometimes when you're watching dailies as an editor, you're watching it looking, hoping for like the moment, you know, looking for a certain moment, specific thing that you think will make the scene work, you know, that the scene needs. Just, and it's already been shot, obviously, but you're kind of watching, okay, where's it going to come? And I kind of, you know, when I'm directing, I take that same approach. There's something specific that we're waiting to see if we get, and you kind of have a better sense, I think, of, or at least more experience of knowing when you have a scene, when you've got the moments you need, when the scene is working and you feel like the edit will work,
Mhm.
when you've done a lot more editing. And so I think that's what it's kind of helped me, I think, be able to move faster and move on when I know I have all the pieces I need, even if it's a little bit cobbled together because you have a little time, right?
Yes. Yeah, and just kind of like almost before we're heading up to almost to close, but
Mhm.
I want to know an important thing. This is an indie movie. How much? What was your budget for production?
I will say, what I'll say is it was under $1 million. Um, and yeah, that, you know, for all the visual effects and all stuff like that, definitely a challenge. So yeah, and it was, I would say it was a significant, you know, it wasn't $999,099. It was
Mhm.
a good little bit below $1 million, let's say.
And I want to ask you, how do you get like really good actors as Ron Perlman and Rosanna Arquette that have been working in the industry for a long
Yeah.
time? How do you get them involved? Like really like all Hollywood actors.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times it comes down to material, but then how you get them to even look at the material or take it seriously, and part of it is over time working with people who you develop trust with and can sort of say whether it's a casting director or someone like that can say, for like Rosanna, a casting director friend of mine, Elizabeth Barnes, kind of came out to help us finish
Mhm.
casting the movie, and we have a great relationship. And she could go to the manager. You have to make an offer, and you have to say these are the dates and this is the money, and all that kind of stuff up front. So you have to be able to give them the information they need to read it, and then hopefully someone who has some connection with. I never thought we'd get someone like Rosanna. I've always loved Rosanna's work so much. After Hours, one of my favorite movies ever made.
Mhm.
But relationship with a manager can say, hey, listen, if she does this movie, I know this director. She's gonna have a good time. The movie's gonna be good. Just if you're gonna do it, if you're willing to do an indie, this is one that's not gonna like burn you. And that's a big part of it. Yeah.
And I also think like the time frame that you have to finish the movie, it also is a good deal for the actors, right?
Sure.
It-
Yeah. No, it's
so
like a low. It's usually low. Only if you're shooting really fast, right? So it's only a couple days, and if they like the script, Rosanna and Ron really they got this. They understood the script. Not every, it's hard. Sometimes you don't always imagine the same things when you read a script as maybe the director intends. But I had good conversations with them about it, and they kind of got what I was going for. The same way you did in terms of the metaphors and things like that.
yeah, that's fantastic. Finally, last but not least, makeup and special
Hmm.
effects. The makeup of the Succubus when it's final Succubus is I love it, and the whole thing, like the whole bloody thing, I
Yeah.
just love it. How you were able to put that together?
That was a great thing where our producer had worked with is Tate Steinsick, who designed everything, and I never have met him in person. He's in Oklahoma, and so we designed everything via Zoom. But great session. His work is amazing. And then Eric Zapato, who came out and did actually works with him and put it all together. Just very talented people who built the stuff and applied it. And we were really fortunate to have such talented people working on it who rose to the occasion and just wanted to make all our cool weird stuff as good as it could be, because stuff like the goat baby, when people see the movie they'll understand, like the goat baby and stuff, like that's stuff that could very easily have not worked at all, but they did such a cool thing with it, and then taking their advice on how to make everything feel the most alive, and it was really fun too. Yeah.
Yeah. Finally, just to close,
Mhm.
what is your next work, Daniel?
So I have like 5 things right now that I'm hoping will happen. Things always take a really slow, long time. But the one thing that I'm very excited about is my previous movie. I worked with Matthew Modine,
Mhm.
of Full Metal Jacket and Stranger Things,
Mhm.
and we have a western that we want to do together. That was Matthew's idea, and so we've
Okay.
been working on that. And it's very kind of brutal man against nature, a lot of it kind of thing. So we're hoping to bring back a lot of the same makeup people, the makeup and things like that, because they did such a great job. So many people that worked on these indie movies have really delivered. So it was a great opportunity to say, okay, they did that. Let's do something else. So that's one thing I'm definitely very excited about.
That's fantastic. So I'm looking forward to keep an eye on your work, and I hope that we have another opportunity to have another conversation like this one. Thank you very much for being here today, Daniel.
Thank you, Eric.
About that, well, this was Cinepapina. You can watch Succubus right now on Tubi and in certain festivals around the world. Thank you very much, Daniel.